All right, at this time, I'd like to reconvene the regular board meeting. Clerk of the board, please call the roll.
Arencibia,
Present.
Hall,
Present.
Segura,
Here.
Solis,
Present.
Tarantino,
Here.
Aguirre,
Here.
Stubblefield. Here.
Thank you. We'll now hold a moment of silence and do the Pledge of Allegiance. If real quickly, not real quickly, if we can remember in our thoughts, and I thought I'd read a few things that Mr. Colin Powell had, his 13 rules on life. He passed away recently, a leader in this nation. I'll read them real quick. 1, it ain't as bad as you think. It will look better in the morning. 2, get mad, then get over it. 3, avoid having your ego so close to your position that when your position fails, your ego goes with it. 4, it can be done. 5, be careful what you choose. 6, don't let adverse facts stand in the way of a good decision. 7, you can't make someone else's choices. 8, check small things. 9, share credit. That's 9, share credit. 10, remain calm, be kind. 11, have a vision. 12, don't take counsel of your fears or naysayers. And 13, perpetual optimism is a force multiplier. So we can remember Mr. Powell, General Powell, in our thoughts. Thank you. Hand over your heart. Ready, begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. The board met in closed session preceding this meeting to discuss the following issues. 1, public employee discipline, dismissal, release, reclassification, reassignment, resignation, transfer, government code section 54957. 2, conference of legal.
Excuse me.
Yes.
I can't understand you. You keep like warping out, in and out, in and out. So something's up with the sound.
I'll try to, how about if I slow down? Can you, let me read this one. Let me know if you could hear it all right. Conference with legal counsel, anticipate litigation. Paragraph 2 of subdivision D of government code section 54956.9.
Yeah, it's working for him.
3, conference with labor negotiator, government code section 54957.6. 4, public employee performance evaluation, government code section 54957. The board took no reportable action. At this time, I'll entertain a motion to approve the agenda for the October 25th, 2021 regular board meeting with the change that the board first will consider agenda item Q2
So moved.
and F7 after the consent agenda. Do I have a motion? I just got a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. Vote, please.
Stubblefield,
Yes.
Arencibia,
Yes.
Hall,
Yes.
Segura,
Yes.
Solis,
Yes.
Tarantino.
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0.
We will now provide opportunity for SECOD Representative Dr. Mark Scarvana to make any comments if he chooses.
No comments tonight, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We will now have a message from Superintendent Dr. Moises Aguirre.
Thank you, President Segura. At this meeting, I wanted to just highlight student advocacy because we have before tonight a group of students that were here previously and here today. And so I just wanted to extend our gratitude for working with staff to do this collaboratively. I also wanted to remind everybody to continue those practices to make sure we're all safe, so wearing face masks, making sure you're practicing good sanitation. And again, continue to encourage everybody that those vaccines are what's going to keep our community safe, and those vaccines are what's going to allow us to ensure that we're doing everything we can to make sure we're not only being safe ourselves, but we're also caring for those individuals who are in our families and in our community. So I just wanted to extend that reminder that this is critically important, and wanted to again just reemphasize those points. So with that is my update.
Thank you, Superintendent. We'll now have a report from the Student Board Representative, Ms. Gabrielle Stubblefield.
Good evening. I had a meeting with Dr. Bravo and Dr. Theodore to further our discussion on student mental health and awareness. in our effort to expand and coordinate with students across our community on the topic of mental health and awareness. We are inviting students to attend the district-wide Mind Out Loud conference hosted by the San Diego County Office of Education. It is a free virtual event led by students to raise mental health and awareness. Thank you.
Thank you. This is the point on the agenda where members of the public may address the board on any matter not on the agenda and have 3 minutes each to do so. The Board of Trustees cannot legally take action on or respond to matters not posted on the public agenda, but will refer the matter to the superintendent's office for review and report. Thank you for cooperation.
First speaker is Kathleen Cheers.
Good evening. As a matter of public record, I would like to begin by questioning the integrity and fiscal responsibility of hiring Mr. Rodriguez as a Sweetwater labor negotiator. Mr. Rodriguez has been on full paid leave of absence from the Sweetwater teaching position, accruing retirement benefits, while serving and currently on the California Teachers Association Board of Directors for San Diego and Imperial County. He also serves as an executive board member of the San Diego and Imperial County's Labor Council. Can any one of you explain to me how and why you've chosen to fail in your charge of independence in serving the parents and taxpaying community as a school board member with this hire? What's the big deal, some may ask? He is fighting for teachers. Yes, he is, and has historically done an excellent job in his role as labor leader. But the question is, if Ms. Julie Walker is fighting for fair wages and benefits for teachers, and Mr. Rodriguez is actively doing the same, who is representing the taxpayers? Who is on the opposite side of the negotiation table? It appears no one. Undoubtedly, some will once again attempt to paint this as anti-teacher, anti-employee. It is not. What it is quite simple, a call for accountability by exposing the lack of community representation by this board. Remember, I'm the same person who questioned how the board would, number one, authorize our current superintendent be awarded a salary higher than his predecessor, with the full knowledge he has no teaching or admin credential, and the necessity of a waiver from the state. Number two, how our general counsel was too given what amounts to a raise. All the while, the foot soldiers, also known as teachers, counselors, admin, and others, have received only words of thanks and pleas for grace for their unprecedented hard work. Moving on. A few years back, our board, primarily and most passionately Trustee Segura, endorsed the promises offered by labor leader Tom Lemon when they approved the project labor agreement. Let the record show, the Voice of San Diego reported last week, Mr. Lemons retired from his union leadership position due to the discovery of his receipt of unintended compensation totaling $200,000. Don't you just love that spin? While this in no way should be received as a negative comment towards the hardworking union labor force, it does justify all the concern I and others raised with all of his promises. Doesn't this information cause you to question? What was the source of the $200,000? Was it a project? Was it member dues? Was it quid pro quo? Interesting that fact was not made public. In closing, is Sweetwater prepared for the Senate Bill 328? The district is currently experiencing many problems with bus transportation. How will trouble-free transportation be addressed with the added mandate? How are you planning on notifying parents so they can alter their work schedules? Have you begun the planning? I thank you for your time.
Stephanie Hubner.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Stephanie Hubner, librarian, Chula Vista Middle School. I'm here yet again to remind you, the board members, that you stated librarians were to return full-time when the budget was restored. The budget was restored, and more, with Esser's 3. But all my students got was one more period of library services. I'll never stop fighting for their right to literacy, to a trained literacy professional, or for full-time library services at this district. I ask you guys to do the same. If we want our students to achieve, excel, and be successful, we must do that across the district equitably. I have teachers who decline to come to the library because they don't want to bring 1 or 2 of their 5 classes. What a disservice. 2 periods. Just 2 periods. That's all my students have access to the library for. The school with one of the lowest literacy rates in the district is being denied access to services while other school sites have full-time library services. What a disparity and an injustice. And it doesn't support our LCAP goal 2 for equity. It simply doesn't. I think that you guys need to make a stand, not to let the district to continue to underrepresent our areas of service. Fight for your students and for their right to read. Have full-time libraries open. Ask the hard questions. They have the money, but they chose not to reinstate us. Who holds them accountable? We do. The public does, and the board does. It's time to speak up and demand equity for literacy in this district with reinstatement of full-time librarians. The district has the money, but they're choosing not to use it to do what you, the board, said was a priority last year. We're not being written into the future of this district. It's up to you to call out the district as representatives of your students and the areas that you serve. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Trevor Angood.
Good evening. Trevor Angood, Eastlake High School teacher, librarian, and alum of Eastlake High School class of 2002. An article recently published in the School Library Journal on October 18th publicized recent findings in the long-term trend assessments done for the National Assessment of Educational Progress, or the NAEP. I want to note that the assessments of 13-year-olds was done pre-pandemic between October and December. Assessments of 17-year-olds were postponed by the pandemic. One striking data point is not where students are tested, but instead in a survey about the test and in their reading habits. A survey question asked students how often they read for fun. In 1984, when the question was first asked, 8% of students answered never or hardly ever. For the next 20 years, the score hovered between 8% and 13%. In 2012, 22% of students answered never or hardly ever do they read for fun. In 2019, that number has grown to 29%. I'll agree that since 2012, personal technology has grown significantly. My students are shocked to hear that I got my first cell phone during my senior year in high school, which could play Snake and program your own ringtones. From the American Library Association State of American Libraries report, in 2019, U.S. adults reported taking an average of 10.5 trips to the library, a frequency that exceeded their participation in 8 other common leisure activities like gambling, museums, and visiting national or historic parks. Without a full-time librarian at every site, students and teachers are not able to visit a library at any time during the school day. My librarian colleagues, like Ms. Hubner spoke of, are seeing that already with teachers excited to bring students to the library but decided against it because it is only available for specific periods. A librarian is necessary in order to teach students how to use the library, not only during their schooling, but to be those visitors that make an average of 10 visits a year as adults to public libraries. A comment heard repeatedly from members of district administrations wanting libraries of the future. Dr. Aguirre, you stated as such when visiting Eastlake's library last spring. A library of the future staffed by a full-time teacher librarian can support students in pleasure reading to stem the tide of students never or hardly ever reading for fun. This is already happening in my library with displays showing books that have been banned or challenged in other libraries. In one period alone, one class alone, 3 of these books were picked off my display, but I was able to redirect students to other copies available outside of the display. Books in my fiction section were also recategorized and organized by 14 categories, including horror, sports, humor, realistic, dystopian, historical fiction. This, coupled with a reading profile quiz given to most 9th graders in support of a 15-minute silent reading every period, has already created a foundation for ease of use in the library. I will note in full disclosure that I'm one of the currently full-time librarians, one of 2 in this district, out of 23 librarian spaces in this district. Projects like these and class visits mentioned simply cannot be done in other schools, as colleagues are only working between 2 to 4 periods. This board promised, I'm going to run a little bit over if with permissions. This board promised on June 24, 2020 that once funding was restored in the district on solid footing, librarians would be the first ones back. Dr. Aguirre, I will quote you again that in a meeting in October 2020, he said that the current staffing levels of librarians were a down payment on a future investment. If you want the libraries of the future, they must start with a full-time librarian at every single school site. Thank you.
Thank you.
No further speakers?
Thank you. Clerk of the board, will you please read the items being pulled from the consent agenda?
The following items are pulled: F3 by staff, F5 by Mr. Segura, F6 by Mr. Tarantino, F7 by Mr. Tarantino and the public, F8 by staff, F9 by staff, G1 by Mr. Tarantino, staff, and the public. G5 by Mr. Tarantino, and Q2 by the public.
Thank you. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda as read?
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Vote, please.
Stubblefield? Arencibia?
Yes.
Hall?
Yes.
Segura?
Yes.
Solis?
Yes.
Tarantino?
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0.
All right. Are we going to Q2 right now?
Yes, sir.
All right, let's go to Q2.
I have several speakers to the item. Alexa Castrita?
Before you get started, welcome. And the board will be accepting 20 minutes of comments today on this item. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Alexa Castrita, a senior at Hilltop High. My peers and I have come together today to encourage you to agree to our proposed resolution urging the Sweetwater District to oppose the issuing of new oil permits and to urge the California governor to begin the process of phasing out oil extraction in California through a just transition that protects frontline communities, many of which your very own students reside in. We are a group of youth from across the Sweetwater District who understand the importance of recognizing the urgency of climate change and its drastic effects on the population of not just our global community, but the ones around us. All of us here today are part of our eco clubs at school, small communities of students who come together to explore new ways to continue fighting the climate crisis however we can. At Bonita Vista, the school's green team created informational graphics designed to educate their students about the climate crisis and about various ways they could help out. At Otay Ranch, the Environmental Justice Club works to make environmentalism a more inclusive community and recognize the social injustices created by climate change by hosting biweekly meetings to discuss these issues and provide students opportunities to help out their community and combat the climate crisis. At Hilltop, our Environmental Justice and Sustainability Club also designed and coordinated a virtual Earth Day in 2020 and held a school-wide thrift shop in 2019 prior to the pandemic to spread awareness about fast fashion and its detrimental impacts on the environment. As mentioned before, this resolution has been successfully passed in the San Diego County Board of Education and the San Diego Unified School District, providing a win for the fight against fracking and climate change. We recognize the intersectionality of the climate crisis and understand how it influences the day-to-day lives of students here in San Diego, especially low-income communities that identify as Black, Indigenous, and people of color. We seek justice and support from higher institutions such as yourselves to ensure that the students around San Diego are protected against the impacts of the oil industry and against climate change. It is our hope that you, the board, also see the importance of this resolution and do your job in safeguarding the futures of your students. Thank you.
Thank you.
Maya Lafney?
Hello, my name is Maya Lofney, and I'm a junior at Bonita Vista High School. We are all joined on behalf of San Diego 350's Youth v. Oil team, as well as some of the various eco clubs across the district. We are asking various San Diego-based organizations to sign a resolution to send to Governor Gavin Newsom to persuade him to stop and limit the issuing of new fracking permits. We are taking action in 3 different stages: the Sweetwater Union High School District, the City of San Diego, and the State of California. The first stage revolves around gaining local support from schools, encouraging the school board to sign our petition in support. The second stage focuses on gaining support from the City of San Diego through council members and the mayor encouraging their signatures on our resolution. The third and last stage addresses the governor on a state level. Here, our team will write a final resolution letter, which will be sent to Governor Newsom in hopes to persuade him to limit and stop issuing new oil fracking permits. In order to do so, we will be participating in Eco Club coalitions, nonviolent direct action, including video projects and educational seminars on fracking, activism, and social media for promoting and raising awareness around our campaign and communicating with and gaining support from youth, students, school boards, city council members, and other environmental organizations. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bibiana Martinez?
Hello, I'm Viviana Martinez. I'm a senior at Bonita Vista High School, and my pronouns are she, her. So I'll be going over the end of fracking resolution, and it's up there on the computer screen, but I also give you a physical copy so it'd be easier to read. And so basically what is a resolution? It's just climate-related facts, mostly locally sourced, and it's evidence how fracking contributes to climate change, environmental injustice, and public health concerns, and additionally how the impact of oil drilling has on students' mental and physical health. So what we are asking the school board to do, so first, the Sweetwater District urges the Governor of California to cease issuing new oil permits and develop a more comprehensive plan for phasing out fracking in California before 2024. And then the second one is the Sweetwater District calls on the Governor of California to keep his previous promises about transitioning California away from fossil fuels and existing oil production. The next one is the district will continue to recognize that climate change and climate justice is an issue of importance to the Chula Vista community. And third, the Sweetwater District the Sweetwater District will continue to transition to renewable energy sources with the urgency that called by the climate crisis. So what we hope to accomplish is to encourage Governor Newsom to take urgent and direct action, have California transition away from oil drilling and fracking, and lastly, protect all students' future and ensure we have a healthy, economically viable, equitable, and sustainable environment. We as students feel so strongly about this resolution because climate change induced by oil extraction poses the greatest threat to our future. This resolution will help fight climate change injustice and ensure that all students have a successful future. And do you guys have any questions regarding the resolution? No? Okay, thank you.
Thank you for the resolution in print. I appreciate that.
Yeah, of course.
Nicole McGaffey.
Hello, my name is Nicole McGaffey. My pronouns are she, her, and I'm a senior at Bonita Vista High School. I have a great interest in environment as I've taken IB Environmental Systems and Societies, where we learned about the negative effects and impacts of fracking and oil drilling and how these environmental issues disproportionately impact people of color. I'm also currently taking AP Environmental Science, and I'm a part of my school's environmental club, Green Team. This subject is something I'm very passionate about as it relates to environmental justice. This issue is not something should not be neglected or ignored because it heavily affects people in the community you and I live in, which is predominantly people of color. As stated in our resolution, 352,782 students in California, predominantly Black, Indigenous, and Latinx communities, attend schools within 1 mile of an oil and gas well. In addition, we are a frontline community, meaning that we experience the first and worst effects of climate change. I care about this issue, and you should as well, because fracking affects the students you serve and work to bring the best education for. This resolution is relevant to students because many students can be negatively affected by fracking. These negative effects include asthma, migraines, headaches, and fatigue, which affect students' ability to learn and be in the classroom. I urge you to sign and support this resolution to continue the well-being of students currently and future students. Thank you.
Sofia Ponce.
Hi, my name is Sofia Ponce, and my pronouns are she and her. I'm a senior at Bonita Vista High. I've been very interested in climate change solutions specifically to end oil fracking in the community for a very long time now. I've seen that oil fracking, especially in the Bay Area, has been increasing over time. I can say I'm privileged. I don't have to worry about air pollution where I live, or water pollution, such as knowing that clean water will come out of my faucet every day. And even living in an area where there are no fracking sites and fossil fuel industries, whereas in BIPOC areas, Black, Indigenous, and people of color communities, or in the Bay Area, air pollution and water pollution is very common there. I want to see a change in those areas first, where having good air quality and water is an everyday necessity to these communities. Even though I live in a privileged area where I don't have to worry about these issues, as a member of society, I would love for everybody to live in a healthy environment, for all people, no matter what race or class. You would think that everybody should have access to a healthy environment to live in, especially in a wealthy country where we live in. We as a community need to all inform each other about the dangers of having fossil fuel industries, fracking sites, and oil and gas industries in lower class areas. Those industries shouldn't be near the people and the wildlife. They shouldn't be present in any community. We should all do our part to stop the increase of industries being put in our neighborhoods and affecting the people and the wildlife. It can be a small action, as simple as informing others and working our way up from there. The closer we are to ending these industries in our communities, the closer we are to ending climate change. Thank you for listening.
There are no further speakers.
All right, thank you to the students for all being here and working through this process to get this resolution in front of the board. Appreciate that. I'll just say, I'll add that I appreciate, this resolution and that it's coming from work through 350.org. So they're very important partners, and they actually consider labor when they talk about jobs, and people lose jobs and they're going to get protected and be helped, and that's in this resolution where it says that straight up says protects workers. So this is a very thought out resolution, and I am speaking in support of it. Anybody else?
Do we need a motion? Can we actually propose this as a motion?
I think Ms. Stubblefield had some comments.
Stubblefield.
Good evening. The agenda item Q2 is in the support of the end of fracking and the fracking resolution. I would like to take the time to explain what exactly fracking is. According to the IPA, the Independent Petroleum Association of America, hydraulic fracking is a process of injecting liquid and harmful chemicals and materials at a high pressure to create fractures in rocks that release the oil and gas trapped inside. This can be extremely dangerous to the state of California's environment because it releases toxic chemicals into the rocks and water and releases methane and other harmful gases into the air. Not to mention, hydraulic fracking adds to the Earth's rising temperatures, which adds to the ongoing climate crisis. Fracking can also poison groundwater, pollute surface water, and threaten wildlife. In addition to humans, the fracking also has the effect on humans. It can be linked to asthma, migraine, and nasal and sinus symptoms. This is why this resolution is so important. This resolution urges Governor Newsom, previously mentioned, to stop issuing new oil permits and begin the process of phasing out oil extraction. It calls on Governor Newsom to implement a buffer zone of 2,500 feet between oil extraction sites in our communities. This resolution has the Sweetwater Union High School District continue to recognize climate change and climate justice as issues of importance, and this resolution ensures that the Sweetwater District continues transitioning to renewable energy sources. By voting yes, you all ensure a safer community and are helping us fight the climate crisis and fracking in the state of California. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other board members have any comments on this? I'll entertain a motion then.
Move to approve. A second.
Moved and seconded. Vote, please.
Stubblefield?
Yes.
Arancibia?
Yes.
Hall?
Yes.
Segura?
Yes.
Solis?
Yes.
Tarantino?
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0.
Thank you. Congratulations. Do a round of applause if you want.
Mr. Segura, if I may, I need to make an announcement. I misspoke when I did the consent agenda. I announced F9, but there is no F9. It was changed on the agenda. It was actually F7 pulled by staff. F7 was pulled, so we're okay. We don't need to revote. But I just wanted to announce that because there was some confusion.
Okay.
Thank you.
And speaking of F7, that's where we're going next.
Correct.
One thing, if I could say something, President Segura.
Yes, go ahead.
In order to help Trustee Hall hear a little bit better, just really speak up into the mic. I think that's something that really helps her, correct, Trustee Hall? Speaking into the mic really helps out as opposed to speaking further away, correct?
I don't think she had her ears on.
Oh.
Okay, we'll speak into the mic.
Yeah, that's really, really get into the mic. I don't think so.
Okay, F7, Superintendent.
Thank you, President Segura. F7 relates to the fact that our district has trustee areas that are based by district, which means that after the decennial census, we have the need to look at how our trustee districts are drawn. And so based on some analysis. This is an initial information item. There will be additional opportunities, but we wanted to present the information and from Davis Demographics regarding our census data and identify the possibility for some next steps, again, with the understanding that there will be additional opportunities for feedback. I also wanted to make sure that it's really clear that this is specifically trustee district areas, and it does not, I repeat, it does not impact attendance boundaries. I just want to make sure I emphasize and re-emphasize, I bold, italicize, and underscore that. This will not affect attendance boundaries. This is about trustee areas. So with that, I'll ask Ms. Carbuccia to present our presenters or introduce our presenters for this evening. Ms. Carbuccia.
Good evening, Dr. Geary, Board. Thank you so much, and just for your knowledge, PowerPoint, to the PowerPoint that was presented and was uploaded, we've added a few pages that include the 3 maps that you are not voting on tonight, but that you are considering, and they should be in front of you as well as on the back table, and will be uploaded to Novus. So at this time, we have worked with Ms. Quirk and myself have worked with two different entities. One is, as Dr. Aguirre said, is Davis Demographics, who has helped us analyze our census data. And at that point, when you look at that data, if in fact there are some off balances, you have to run to a lawyer. And so we did that. We've reached out and are working with Fagan Freeman Fullfrost, who is one of the experts. Go for it, Brandon. One of the experts, I'm going to give you the clicker because you're in charge. One of the experts around voting census and Voting Rights Act. And so Brandon has been able to help us, he and Peter Fagan and Jonathan Salt, to look at these areas, and I'm going to allow him to kind of present a little back history where we are today and the potential of the 3 maps. Thank you.
Hello, everyone, and welcome. My name is Brandon Lalonde, and I'm an attorney with Fagan, Friedman, and Fullfrost, and I'll be joined tonight by the demographer who's working on this case, Scott Torlucci from Davis Demographics. On the side? Sorry. Oh. Should work? No? I'll just ask you for the...
Give it to Deanne, she's got it. She's good at that.
If we can get the next slide, please. It wasn't my fault.
No, it's been that kind of meeting so far, but
Understood.
we're going to turn it around.
Thank you. The objective of tonight's presentation is to ensure population balance of trustee areas, and that's what we're really going to cover here today. And again, bolded, not really underlined here, but in red, no impact on school or student boundaries, attendance boundaries, which is really important. Next slide, please. Before we get into the census data and how that affects the current trustee areas, we're going to talk a little bit about what the California Voting Rights Act is and how the district kind of had its transition a few years ago. So the CVRA, as it's better known, took effect January 1st, 2003, and it prohibits the use of, keyword here, at-large election systems when those election systems either impair the ability of a protected class to elect candidates of its choice or its ability to influence the outcome of an election. Now, that's kind of a mouthful, but what it essentially means is if there's evidence that a protected class isn't able to elect someone or affect the outcome in the way that they should, then that's impermissible under the CVRA. And we're looking at-large election systems here, which is what the district used to have before it transitioned in 2014. So with this information, can we get the next slide, please?
Could you move
closer to the mic? Sure. With this information, in 2014, the district transitioned to what is called a by-trustee area election system. This is the only safe harbor from a CVRA claim, meaning that the district would not be able to be sued under the CVRA. And under this system, a school district is divided into separate trustee areas, and a governing board member is elected from each trustee area, as you all know. The board members are elected only by the registered voters in the particular trustee areas, and we're going to have a little bit of data on that later as well. Next slide, please. When the demographer in 2014 was creating the current trustee area maps, these are the federal and state requirements that the demographer had to use and that the district had to consider in adopting the map. Equal population, as equal as practicable. Minority voting rights, no discrimination, no vote dilution. Equal protection, race must not be a predominant factor. State requirements, tomography, geography, cohesiveness, contiguity of the actual trustee areas, and looking at particular communities of interest based on community feedback. With all of that, in 2014, the trustees adopted this map that's on the screen now, with election sequencing areas 2 and 4 in 2020 and 1, 3, and 5 in 2022. And we'll get a little bit more into the details on this map a little bit later. But see, that's not the end of the story, because as the superintendent said, once the census comes out every 10 years, the district will have to take a look at how that census data impacted the trustee areas. The governing board must then approve any adjustment to make the populations as equal as practicable, among other things. And the real key that we're going to be looking at here is a 10% variance between the largest trustee area and the smallest. And this must be done by March 1st, 2022. If it's not, then the county committee is going to be the one to come in and do it for the district, and the district will have to reimburse all costs. Impact of the census. When the population is balanced, so in some situations, there won't be much population difference between the 10 years. This is kind of rare, but it does happen. We've seen it in a couple other districts. If it remains within that permissible 10% variance, then the board can simply adopt a resolution to submit its map back to the County Committee on School District Reorganization, and then submit that to the registrar for future use. However, what's more common, one more forward, please. What's more common is that after the 10-year census, there's a big change in between one or more trustee areas, as we'll see here. If the population per trustee area is no longer in balance, so it's outside of that 10% variance, the district's demographer will work with legal counsel to prepare draft map options to ensure compliance with the education code. Our recommendation is to seek community input on the newly created map options, hold at least one noticed and advertised public hearing before the board moves forward with selecting the map. And once that map is selected, the board can then adopt the resolution to select and submit that map to the county and the registrar for future use. And again, 10% variance is permissible. This slide is just showing, in the center is the current trustee areas. At the bottom left is the variance following the census data. And if you look at the yellow column there, it shows the variance among the trustee areas now. So District A is minus 8%, and District C is 19.7%, so that's greater than the permissible 10% variance. And we're going to address this a little bit more in detail with the demographer later in the presentation. Next steps, the trustee area map must be adjusted because we're in that second scenario where the population variance is greater than 10. It's not a fresh redraw, so we're not doing the exact same process we did back in 2014. And Davis Demographics has prepared, and I think they submitted it to the presentation, the draft adjusted versions of the map to ensure population across the trustee areas. And what we're going to see is since trustee area 3 is significantly overpopulated based on the census data, it is likely that some portions of that trustee area are going to be shifted out of that trustee area and into surrounding areas to make up for the population difference. So October 25th, today, we're doing the presentation with the 2020 census analysis. A little bit later in October, going into early November, the demographer is going to create those 3 draft map options. So that's been done already here today. So we're a little ahead of the game. The options are going to be posted on the district's website, I believe, following this meeting. And the public is going to be invited to a public hearing to comment on those map scenarios. November 8th will be the presentation and public hearing regarding the adjusted maps, the board resolution to adopt those adjusted maps, and following the meeting, that map will be submitted to the county committee and registrar for use for the next 10 years until the 2030 census data comes out in 2031, which I might be back here in 10 years. So the last thing is the February 28, 2022 deadline, and that's the last possible date that the plan could be accepted and approved by the board, but according to our schedule, we're going to do it way in advance. And now I'm going to turn it over to the district's demographer, Scott.
Yeah. Hello there, everybody. Good evening. I was having a really hard time hearing, and I don't know if you can hear me okay.
Yes, we can.
Okay, good, great. So
yeah, I could hear you too. I can hear you better than I couldn't hear anything either.
Okay. Yeah, so I came up with 3 scenarios that make the trustee areas in compliance with 509 California Ed Code 5019.5. And I guess we can go to the first one here. And I apologize if I mentioned anything or said anything that that was said before, but again, I had a hard time hearing. So with the current trustee areas, what we did is I took these current trustee areas that are adopted and overlaid the 2020 census data. We knew there was going to be changes. There almost always is, especially a district as vast as yours, and some growth has happened in the eastern portion of the district. So what we're trying to do in this is when we look at this data, what we want to do is see the population and divide that by 5. There's 5 trustee areas. So it's about 97,587 per trustee area. What this is showing us is the variance between the highest and lowest is almost 28%. And I believe was mentioned earlier that trustee area C was the farthest away from that variance. So what we wanted to do is take these 3 scenarios and try to make them into compliance. When I'm doing this, my first options I always try to do is do the minimal number of changes possible to make it into compliance. We're not redrawing the whole thing. We're not trying to change everything. We just want to make the appropriate adjustments to bring it into compliance. So next slide, please. This is just the data tables. If I don't think we all want to go into all the data, but this is to make sure it's also still complying with federal and CVRA laws. Please continue on. So in scenario A, what I did is took some of trustee area C and kind of shifted a little bit of it to D and B, and shifted everything just a little bit to the east. Again, this was the minimum amount of changes I could make and still bring it into compliance. I was trying to use freeways and make these areas as contiguous and concise as possible. At this point, it works. It's in compliance where the variance is 6.5%. So this is just one of the options that we have for you. Again, the next slide, please, is the numbers. These are the numbers to show the compliance, and also if you want to look at the various breakdown of the ethnicities and races. Next, please. So again, we still needed to shift the areas a little bit to the east. I made this one a little bit more compact, I believe, than the first one. We're keeping the southern portion D, trustee D and E are all west of the 125, but C had to take a little bit of trustee B's area to be able to make up for the losing in the southern portion. And then B took a little bit of A. So was just a little bit of a shift, of more of a twist than was before. And so again, this one is in compliance, is at 2.6%. So again, the difference between A and B is A was the minimum number of changes. This one, I was trying to get it down a little bit lower to as average as possible. Next slide, please. These are the numbers again to be reviewed if, that were reviewed by F3 Law and deemed to still be in compliance. Next, please. And then finally, scenario C. Scenario C, I just looked at it a little bit differently, came at it and was trying to just make the adjustments that need to be made and bring it down again as much of an average to the average as possible. This one is in compliance. It works. It's still, they're concise, contiguous areas, and they all work. So the three options I gave you were all in compliance with both California law, federal law, and the California Ed Code. And from there, I'm going to turn it back for any questions. Yeah.
Apologies for not speaking up enough into the mic, but if anyone has any questions, please let me know.
Do we have any comments from the public at the end? No? Okay.
Do we comment and express our feelings too, or do we just ask questions as well?
I'm sorry, I do have a public speaker. My apologies.
Okay. Thank you.
Kathleen Cheers.
Good evening. Slide 12 indicates voters will be notified via district info and social media. May I ask what social media will be used? Why not send the materials to the parents via an email? Use school site council, marquees, copies with principals, any and every resource possible with dates, times, and locations of the public hearing and any meetings that will follow up. Will public notices be posted in newspapers and local magazines? Thank you.
Yeah, if there's any questions to me, I really can't hear what's happening.
Okay. Well, you have somebody here that could help with that. So do we have any comments from the board? Or you had a question there, Dr.
No, my question was more of a procedural. I know you're asking for questions, but can we offer commentary as well? That's my question.
Yes.
Looking at the two maps, at least for my area and traditionally the way that my area has functioned, it's splitting the community in two. The second one is the one splitting the community in two. That's area 2, or trustee area B. And I wouldn't be very comfortable with that because my service area is for a particular set of schools, and it would basically rip up the service area that I work under right now in scenario B. When you don't follow the freeway of the 125, it's basically taking half of my community's neighborhoods out of it. So that's one of the things I think I would be very careful. What's the rationale for that? Just be able to make the numbers, to shift the numbers in a way that's different?
So we actually don't have that sort of information, what communities of interest are actually in the district, but that's exactly what we're here to find out.
Yeah.
Exactly that kind of comment.
So, like if
we could put it back up.
Slide, what slide is it? Scenario B.
It's not numbered.
Oh.
And I'll try to relay it to you, Scott, so that you can hear as well.
She doesn't have the new one on that screen because the new one's not posted yet.
Okay. Well, I mean, if you look at the draft, if you look at that scenario B, you're basically cutting Bonita into two pieces. And one would be on trustee B, the other one would be in trustee C. And the schools that I've worked with in service so far have been Bonita Vista and Hilltop, right? But by doing that, you're basically eliminating all of half the area of Bonita. If you can see, does that make sense what I'm saying?
Yes.
This really, this one wouldn't work, I can tell you that, for, at least for me, in my area, would not be able to work.
Thank you for those comments. Any other board members? Trustee Tarantino, thank you.
Thank you, President Segura. Yeah, first of all, I'm map challenged. I can't read maps. So what would be helpful to me is if you could make the maps bigger and also put the street names and identify where the schools are, because I have no idea what you're doing by looking at this. I really don't. But Dr. Arancibia is gifted in terms of cartography, but I'm not. And so I have absolutely no idea, you know, I couldn't see that Bonita was being bifurcated.
If you look at, the way I see it is
but
like,
I don't see maps, Adrian. I don't see maps. So you could tell me all the things that you want to tell me, but I can't read maps. So, but that would be my suggestion, so like that we could see the street names and also where the schools are and what schools are going to be, even though the boundaries are not going to be shifted in terms of the attendance boundaries, but definitely the schools sounds like are going to be shifted from one area to another. And I agree it should be contiguous. You can't have schools in trustee area C move all the way to trustee area A or to trustee area E. So I like that idea, but I don't know what you're talking about in this.
Sure.
I'm sorry.
Did Mr. Torlici, did you want to answer that, or you were? I didn't know, or was that you, sir?
That's more of a demographer-based question.
Yeah.
I know that, and Scott, if you couldn't hear, I can definitely follow up with you after the public hearing as well.
the schools are listed, it's just a little triangles. And you can't.
The names are. Can you read those
The
names?
names aren't, but they're positioned in the little triangles that you see here. Those are high schools, like Bonita Vista. I'm sorry.
Thank you.
Yeah, they're there. It's just that you can't read it. But I think that's what I would have suggested.
Thank you. Trustee Hall?
Thank you. I did hear you call my name, but I can't understand anything being said by the people in your room, either at the podium or, the public speaking. It's all a garble. But I understood very well what Mr. Torlucci was saying. And I'm kind of puzzled, why we didn't get those 3 scenarios along with the board item. And because I found that the data that you had, the slide after each map, is very important to look at when we're considering, which way we want to go, because that is really how the makeup is. So I'd really like to see those, that information and have it to study before we make a final choice. I know when we did this originally to divide the district into trustee areas, there was an interactive map that was provided to the public and to the staff. It's on our district website still, I believe. I don't know if it's still interactive or not, but we had that ability to go in and kind of look and play with it a little bit. But it also had all that information that you showed in the slides that you had that were addition to the ones we got. I didn't get the other ones. So I would really think that I'd need to look at that to understand it and see how the different demographics are affected in all of this. Because I do believe when we first drew the maps, it was heavy on Mr. Tarantino's side then too, because obviously he's got very populated area and 3 of the biggest schools are in his area. So I understand the need to kind of redraw and reframe how we're doing this. But I really need that information. And I also wanted to understand about the census, the military families in the area, because when you're looking at the census, you're looking at data of voting age only. And are you projecting that for a number of years? Also, kind of how that might be impacted, or are you just taking it straight from the census as a picture in time when you're looking at those demographics?
The census, the data that we look at is straight census data that has been adjusted by California to take into account the any incarcerated people on military bases, and those type of things. They're put back in their home zip code in their home area. So it is the straight census from the Census Bureau. Then it goes to California, and California makes those adjustments. And then we have what's called the California adjusted data. It is not projected, it's not forecast at all. These are the straight numbers they're taking. And it's not, when we're looking at this, we're not looking at voting age population, or we're not looking at citizens. It's the actual overall population per the census in each one. To answer, and I think I heard somebody else mention this a little bit earlier, I do have a web map available. It's made available to the district. I'll be sending them a link, and they can post that, where you can have anybody in the public can put their address in. It'll zoom into their area. They could see what their trustee area will be. You can zoom in and out just like any Google map or anything else to see the boundaries that you want to see. It'll have all the school information and everything else on there. So yeah, these paper maps are limited because we can't get all the street names on there. We can't get a lot of detail, but there is going to be a web map available for the trustees and eventually, I believe, the public to look at. Yeah, so I hope I answered your questions.
Yes, you did very well, very well. That's exactly. I mean, it's an interesting. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any more comments? Questions from the board? All right.
Thank you for the information.
Thank you for all this information.
Thank you.
Thank you. Did you have something, General Counsel? No?
I just wanted to make sure that we reiterate that the next meeting will be our public hearing on these. We will, Paula can't hear me, so maybe if I talk a little louder. We will be bringing this November 8th was a public hearing. We plan on uploading these 3 scenarios tomorrow, and within the next day or so, the interactive map that Scott was talking about. That would allow you to look at the 3 areas, the 3 potential maps. You can see the schools, you can see the streets, and then email, obviously, feedback, as you always do in the public, to Ms. Vicedo to share with the board, as well as coming to the meeting at our next board meeting.
Thank you. So that concludes F7. We can move to F3.
Still couldn't understand you, but thank you.
Do we need to take a break to figure that out, or
Maybe.
we should do that? Let's stop. We'll take a break till 7:15. let's move on to F3. I can lead off with that. I'll be quick. This last weekend, actually, I attended the Castle Park. That's actually not Castle Park. It was at Castle Park, but the College and Career Fair there. Well, it was well attended. The Navy was there. The trades, our partners of the trades were there. Several unions were there with their apprenticeship personnel giving out info. Mr. Monroe's IBEAs were there doing, had their biodiesel demonstration going on, which is always interesting and cool. And it was a nice day. So I appreciate that happening, and it was a real good turnout. I know Dr. Moore was there, and the director of College and Career, Mr. Kovar, was there as well. I'm not sure who else was here, but thank you for showing up. Well, then I saw that on the social media that the IBers from Castle Park High, they participated in the Chula Vista cleanup. So they're out picking up trash and working on our environment. So that was really good. And going back to the college construction fair, I like to thank Principal Vicky Mitrovic and Mr. Gomez as well for putting that event together. And that's all I have. Thank you. Anybody want to go next? Vice President Solis, thank you.
Thank you, President Segura. I wanted to say thank you to all our teachers, all our staff members for all the hard work that they're putting in. I know it's been tough, but we really appreciate it. So thank you for that. Also, I was contacted by a constituent with regards to a resolution with regards in the matter of promoting good health and discouraging tobacco use through participation in local tobacco use prevention education efforts. So I'm going to forward it to our president and our superintendent to see if we can get it on the next meeting, for the next meeting. Yeah, so thank you for that.
Thank you, Vice President Solis. Anybody else? Mr. Tarantino.
Yes, I'd like to begin by congratulating Eastlake High School senior Trey White, who was offered a football scholarship by SDSU, and he committed to SDSU last week. He leads Eastlake High School with 40 tackles and 6 sacks so far this season. So congratulations to Trey, and we wish him well as a future SDSU football player. Again, I'd like to echo what Mr. Segura said about the Castle Park High Trade Fair. 31 trades were represented. Again, in addition to Cesar Gamez and Principal Mitrovic, I'd like to thank the custodial staff for their work in setting up and tearing down all of the venue area. While I was there, I visited a booth that was staffed by 2 of Mr. Gamez's students, Gary Garcia and Isidro Navarrete. These students created a water purification system and were demonstrating that to anyone who dropped by, and it was quite impressive. So congratulations to them and everyone who participated. I'd like to call out the Sweetwater Teachers of the Year for 2021-2022, Sarah Kesty from Castle Park Middle, Marina Dillingham from Bonita Vista High School, Ivy Medrano from East Hills Academy, and Greg Simpson from Chula Vista High School. And last but not least, congratulations to the co-chairs of the Magaisa Conference, which was held on Saturday. Co-chairs Valerie Ruiz and Margaret Magabasco. Nice job. And one of the things that impressed me was with the guest speaker, the keynote speaker, Tatiana Santiago, who is a radio personality on Star 94.1. You know, she gave the kids some words of wisdom, which were very similar to what Dr. Adams gave to the students who attended the African American conference earlier, and And that is number one, embrace your cultural identity and your own stories. Be true to who you are. Who you are is our strength. And be aware of self-care. Take time for yourself to sit, process feelings, reflect on your day, and process your thoughts and your feelings. And also be close to the friends who support you, and have fun. Allow yourself to make mistakes. To do things the right way is not without shortcuts. So again, congratulations to everybody who attended, and good job for everyone who helped plan that. That's all I have.
Thank you, Trustee Tarantino. Anyone else have any comments? Oh, there you go. Trustee Hall, go ahead. Thank you.
Thank you. Now that I can hear. I can hear me. Oh, sorry.
All right, now I'm good, right?
Yes.
Okay, so I was going to also say thank you, Mr. Tarantino, for mentioning the Magaisa conference. I also attended it. It was so good. The keynote speaker, Tatiana Santiago, started off. She's a radio host with Star 94.1. She's the morning host, and really related a lot of her own experiences growing up and encouraged students and families. It was really great. Like every year, they do a fantastic job reaching out and providing this cultural, really not just an experience, but a lot of resources and a lot of conversation, ability to input and to have, questions and answer time in the different sessions. One of the sessions I attended had a panel with Rosalind Cruz, Michael Lapid, Alcina Maaba, and Mary Rose Peralta, and it was facilitated by Nick Benny. Really great. It was around mental health, which is just something that's really important, especially in communities that have a lot of pressure. And now I think it's even more so with what we've been experiencing during COVID and some of the lashing out against Asian Pacific communities. It was really helpful, and I think they did a lot of this. They talked about students and how to avoid some of the toxicity of maybe that's embedded in some of the culture of having to perform, and to really do so many things under pressure. And they really talked to that, a lot of it, and they gave several resources to students about it. And always the message, the underlying message to all the students was that staff was there for them. If they ever needed anything, if they were experiencing stress or anxiety, they should always connect with an adult or somebody that they trusted at the school was there to provide support and to help them get through those issues. And especially when it came to, talking to their parents about things that really mattered. And sometimes I think that's difficult because students always want to please their parents, and the pressure is really real, especially during right now when everybody's coming back after a year and a half of being shut down. So I think they did a great job, and I was really privileged to be part of that, to witness it. So kudos to Valerie Ruiz, Margaret Macabasco, and Annalyn Thompson for their work in coordinating that event. I would like to make one request, Dr. Aguirre, and that is that we have an update on the implementation of the new HR system and the Infor system, so that we know if we're on schedule and where we are at, and maybe if there's challenges that we're still facing, or is the pathway clear, and are we going to make headway to get this online before the next year? That's my request. I would really like to have that, and I really appreciated when we had that that information. I think it was in a Friday update and maybe in a presentation from IT about the different licenses and contracts that they have for all the devices and the licenses and the, even some of the other hardware infrastructure, what we're doing, that kind of thing, and what those licenses are for, the purchase orders, where we're at with all of that. I mean, how many have expired and we're not going to renew, but how many have been renewed and how many have been added to that, so we have a real handle on what we're spending and that kind of infrastructure. I really appreciate that. So thank you for that, and that's all I have.
Thank you, Trustee Hall. Dr. Arancibia, did you have anything, sir?
No, I just wanted to say briefly, I wanted to thank teachers, folks that are classified workers, everyone that has made the homecoming games and the homecoming dances possible. And I think to me, it really moved me a couple of weeks ago, and I sent a text to cabinet leadership on a Friday night at 8 p.m. I apologize for bugging you at that time. It just was really moving to hear the fireworks going off in the local schools, because it made me feel like we're heading back to a little bit of normalcy, and to understand that, hey, our kids deserve to have that little bit of normalcy and a little bit of joy as well, and you all made it possible. So I just wanted to say thank you for that.
Thank you, Dr. Arancibia. I believe that concludes that. We can move on to F5, and that was pulled by me. Yes, so my only question on that was just if we could just make sure that we're given an update on ongoing cost with this service, and maybe if there are some large projects that will be, I'm not sure if there will be, but a large task in here that will be potentially cost a lot of money, that maybe we can get a range. I know, just kind of so the board is updated on the money and whoever else that we'll be spending on that. And that's all I have.
And a reminder, from what we heard, it's a finite cost, correct? Oh, sorry.
There are a number of finite steps. There's going to be a work product at the end of this process, and so I'll ask our general counsel if there's anything else to add. But there will be work product expected. General Counsel Carbuccio.
There is a work product. We will be bringing forward policies for the board to consider. That will. I'm sorry, Paula. Is it still on, Deanne? So we will be bringing forward board policies, board procedures and protocols that will need to be adopted and that will need to be approved by the SEC, and that this consultant will have to give recommendations for. But we do have a cost estimate for it, and it is included already in the legal budget.
Thank you. And with that, I'll entertain a motion, unless there's any more questions.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded.
I'll
Vote.
second.
Vote, please.
Arancibia?
Yes.
Hall?
Yes.
Segura?
Yes.
Solis?
Yes.
Tarantino?
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0.
Moves us to F6, grant funding, pulled by Mr. Tarantino.
Yes, I had a question about the charger grant to the 3 schools. It mentions that there's going to be offering of tickets to one of the Charger home games in Irwindale, I believe it is. I think it is. I think it's Irwindale. Maybe not.
No, Wilmington.
No. It's great. Yeah, it's by the airport. Anyway, so I was wondering, are the students? Are we going to provide transportation for the students to go to these home games, or this home game, whichever one they determine, or will they be on their own?
Dr. Getty, go ahead.
Thank you, President Segura. It's not my understanding that there will be transportation. However, I'll ask Dr. Alvarez if she can, as the mover of this particular item, if she can follow up on that question.
Okay, thank you.
All right.
That's all I had. I'll move approval if there's no other questions or comments.
I'll second that.
Moved and seconded. Vote, please.
Arancibia?
Yes.
Hall?
Yes.
Segura?
Yes.
Solis?
Yes.
Tarantino?
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0.
F8, we have a presentation.
All right, for F8, this is the question that was addressed at the prior board meeting, which is regarding the calendar of regularly scheduled board meetings. There was conversation around different options and a request for staff to return with a recommendation. So based on that board discussion, staff followed up, and we're bringing forward 3 options for board consideration based on the prior board dialogue. At this time, there's a set of options that are being presented for board consideration. The option being recommended by staff is to move to regular board meetings that occur once a month during the second Monday of every month, except for the month of June, where we do need to take action regarding the budget and LCAP adoption. The additional options presented include, thank you, Ms. Vicero, you're I think highlighting. So holding meetings the second Thursday of every month, and then again with 2 regular meetings occurring in June. And lastly, there's kind of the status quo option, which would be to continue with 2 board meetings a month. For most of the month, there are some exceptions as currently scheduled. So that is this agenda item. Again, it's based on prior board discussion at the last board meeting for your consideration.
Thank you, Dr. Aguirre. Do we have any more discussion on this item? Or?
I just wanted to say, you know, I reached out to staff and everything, and this is one of the issues that I think Mondays should probably stay the day, just simply because it allowed us to comply with the Brown Act a little bit easier, and at the same time too, for many folks, allows us to begin and get the reports in that we need on Friday. It would become very, very difficult to have a meeting and then have a report come in the very next day. So I'm really thankful that you've done this for us and you've listened to the conversations that we had last meeting, and I'm really appreciative that you came up with these 3 options. Do we just move to have one, or do we vote on it?
Go ahead, Dr. Aguirre.
Thank you. Thank you, President Segura. So at this point, again, this is the staff recommendation. There's some options here for board consideration. I think it needs to go through the board process for approval. And then this approval, I want to be clear, would commence, whatever the board ultimate decision is, that would commence beginning in January. So because the calendar is brought by the board office, by Ms. Vicero, at the December board meeting. So this will begin, whatever option is selected would begin in January.
Thank you. Vice President Solis.
Thank you, President Segura. Thank you, staff, for bringing this forward and including my Thursdays. Appreciate that. But I know Dr. Aguirre had a conversation with staff, and as staff sees it that they work better on Mondays, then I'm not opposed to that, because I was just thinking that it'd be easier for staff to recover on a Friday instead of having to. If we go long, then they have to recover Tuesday, Wednesday. But I'm good with the staff recommendation.
Thank you, Vice President Solis. Anybody else? Oh, Trustee Hall. Before you go, let me just give my 2 cents. So I'm speaking in support of option 2. Oh, I'm sorry, not option 2, for the Monday meetings. So and one of the reasons why is. We recently were polled at the County School Board Association, the California School Board Association, we told them we hold our meetings on the first Monday. So will have set next year's calendar to align with that. So I hate to change that now or tell them that, hey, we changed our mind or changed our date. So third Monday. Second. Yeah, so we're the second and they're the third. Yes, so. That lines up perfectly. So go ahead, Trustee Hall.
Thank you. Oh, wait.
There you go.
You're good.
Thank you. Sorry, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So I understand that staff would prefer to have 1 meeting a month, and I'm not opposed to that. I would like to see at least another meeting in January, early in January, where we are, as a board, meet for governance reasons to really work out, a vision, our vision, and for a 10-year vision or 5-year vision of where we want the school to go and our priorities for that. because I think that will help guide work. Like anytime the district has something funding or, doesn't have funding, they kind of can use that as a guide. But there's a lot of work the board must do together. And I think we need a separate meeting for that to really, and kind of schedule it every year as a standing meeting to work on our governance team. And that, because there's always something you can't discuss in a regular meeting. That's sort of a special meeting where the board really works through and develops relationship and talks about priorities and sets goals for themselves. And also, I was looking at the governance handbook recently, and I really think we need to revisit that. So I would request that we have those additional meetings scheduled. And I would want to remind you that in December, it's really a lot to do the first interim and some of the other things that we have to do. We have to pick auditors. We have a lot of deadlines at that point in time. And it's the same meeting as our governance elections on who's president. And we've never really had a problem with, kind of going in line on who's next to be president. But that may or may not be the case for, boards in the future. I just want to put that out there that I think there are times where we need additional meetings and I know we can call those special meetings, but I would really like to have a governance, meeting and not just a 3-hour, let's run through it. And I think we also need to kind of have a budget workshop separate from our regular board meetings. And I know that Dr. Aguirre talked about having 2 in June, but I think we need something way before June because that's really where it all comes together. And I think we need to have some discussion on budgets and where we're going with things before we get to June. So that would be my request, some consideration for that. Thanks.
Thank you. Mr. Tannertino?
Thank you, President Segura. I have a question about time. So I know that at the last meeting in our discussion, Mrs. Hall was adverse to the fact that we have a hard end time with an opportunity to extend the time should we not get through the agenda. And
I wasn't.
Yeah, you said that. No, you
That's
did.
okay.
But that's okay.
Trustee Hall, please finish.
I can barely hear the discussion, so I know I didn't say anything about wanting a hard.
Trustee Hall, let Mr. Tarantino finish.
Okay, so anyway, if we do decide to have a hard stop, whatever that time is, and then have an opportunity to vote to extend the meeting so that we can get through the agenda, do we have to decide on that now, or can we just do that at a meeting, or does it have to be in the resolution that we are going to do that if we should not finish, or whether it's the pleasure of the board to go until 2 o'clock in the morning?
Dr. Aguirre?
Thank you, President Segura and Trustee Tarantino. So I'll ask Ms. Viceta to share some kind of what was the previous practice, because there has been a practice such as that. The reality, I think, is it is the board prerogative. That's the bottom line. But if you would like to ensconce it in a bylaw, I'll ask Ms. Viceta. But at the end of the day, it is a board prerogative. Ms. Viceta?
Exactly what he said. That was in the board bylaw before for the meetings, that meetings would end at 10 p.m. Unless extended by a vote of the board, and they could be extended one time for a specified period. And then after that, the meetings would end. So if this board chose to make that a rule, you would certainly, I think, desire to put that in your bylaw so that it was a known rule, and would be what you follow every meeting. But again, it's at the prerogative of the board.
And we would have to decide that tonight?
No, this is just to clarify what dates you want for the regular meeting. If this item is approved tonight, we would be bringing the bylaw back with the bylaw on the meetings to specify that you have chosen, should it be the second Monday of the month. And then if we got direction to add language regarding an end time, we would write it into the bylaw at that time, and you could approve it when the bylaw is revised, which we would bring to the next meeting, because the organizational meeting in December has to have the schedule of meetings that you approve. So these are not the dates set in stone that you're approving. You're just giving us direction for the date to schedule them.
Thank you for that clarification.
Yes, thank you for the clarification. Trustee Hall?
Thank you. Oh, thank you, and I apologize for interrupting you, Mr. Tarantino. Yeah, because I don't remember asking for that, and obviously, when we first started in 2014, the prior board did have a hard close date, and they used to walk out while they still had no business accomplished during their meetings. So I know that we don't intend for that to happen, and I certainly don't feel that we need a 10 o'clock hard close to do that. When we started, we had public comment that went on for hours and hours, and I think what Mr. Segura, President Segura, has demonstrated this year is that there is a way to really remind the public and limit public comment, because this board meeting is for board business. And while we really appreciate and value all the public input that we get every meeting, we do want to make sure that we get our board business completed. And I don't think it's right to put a time limit on it because, you know, it's not necessary. We've been ending this year and most of last year well before 8 o'clock or shortly thereafter. So I don't feel that we need that written into a board policy. I think it sends the wrong message to the public.
Thank you, Trustee Hall. Any more
No, I just
discussion, or do we have a?
Can I go ahead and move that we approve the second Monday, once a month meeting plan?
And then the 2 regular meetings in June?
That's correct. No, as stated.
Oh, as stated on here? All right, there's a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Moved and seconded. Vote, please.
Arencibia?
Yes.
Hall?
No, because I wanted to have an extra board governance special meeting early in the year, like January. That was my only objection.
Segura?
Yes.
Solis?
Yes.
Tarantino?
Yes.
Motion passes 4 yes, 1 no.
All right, that takes us to G1 pulled by, I believe there's a presentation. There's an asterisk there.
Thank you, President Segura. Yes, this evening, Dr. Alvarez will be presenting our SR3 plan for our district. Again, this is meant to convey to the Board of Trustees and to our community and to all our stakeholders kind of what our approach is at this time. As things continue to evolve, you know, this has the possibility to evolve with evolving conditions. But this is our thinking at this time, and it is what we are hoping to upload and present and submit to the County Office of Education. So with that, Dr. Alvarez, please.
Good evening, Dr. Aguirre, President Segura, and board members, and our community and staff. This evening, we'll be talking about the Elementary Secondary School Emergency Relief Fund Expenditure Plan, which has really been in the works since February of last year. Just want to give a little bit of an overview for our board in terms of the actual allowable uses for ESSER funds. Sorry, I'm kind of moving these forward, trying to go fast, but not that fast. So the ESSER funds are aligned with our Secondary Education Act, our Elementary and Secondary Education Act, the Adult Education Act, the IDA, and Perkins, which helps govern our CTE programs. So anything that is allowable under those types of uses are also allowable under the ESSER funds. Primarily, these funds were to address the pandemic and all of the outcomes of the pandemic. And so you'll see that responding to emergency preparedness and making sure that we are able to prepare, prevent, and respond to the coronavirus is the primary goal. We also focus, as many of our plans do, in particular our LCAP and our Title I plans, with our neediest students, our students who are low income, our students with disabilities, our homeless and foster youth, our racial and ethnic minority students, and then also students that need additional supports. As we implemented this plan, it was really looking at how do we across the district have systems to address the needs of students. We are also able to allow for training and professional development in regards to infectious disease, but also training our staff to meet the needs of students. As you know, we have spent many of our CARES Act funding and other types of funding related directly to the coronavirus to buy supplies, emergency equipment, sanitization equipment, ensuring that our facilities are clean. And then also, as we noted in previous plans, feeding our students and our families has been a primary goal. In the time that we were closed, over 6 million meals were served in the district. That included for students, but also families. And so making sure that those elements are there, as well as the technology for online learning that is such a critical factor. As you know, we were a one-to-one school district. When we had some of the financial crisis, we did have to address some of those gaps for our students, and so purchasing technology, not only the hardware, but the software and the connectivity were elements that were also included in this plan. And so those were included there. Mental health has certainly been a primary focus, and so you'll see elements of that within this plan, as well as making sure that we have those after-school programs and extended learning opportunities for our students, such as summer school, credit recovery, summer bridge, and those elements. And so you'll see that. And then one of the biggest elements is really looking at the lost instructional time. So although I believe our teachers and our staff gave probably 200% during the pandemic to support our students, there were some students, because of issues occurring at home, did not have access or opportunity. And so we want to ensure that we are really offering students assessment supports, academic interventions to ensure their success, that we're able to accelerate their learning. And so those elements are also included in this plan. And then school facilities improvements are one of the areas that are included. There is an application that we will have to submit for any of the capital outlays that are over $5,000, and we'll be doing that process once and if the plan is approved. We also have the ability to add funding for inspections of our HVAC systems, of making sure our HVAC systems are up to date, of adding control systems, air filtration, all those types of elements to ensure that our classroom environments are productive for our students. And then anything that aligns with the Center for Disease Control in terms of prevention opportunities, as well as in California, the California Department of Health, which we rely on heavily for our guidance. And then the last one, I'm going to make note of it because we did receive criticism and some feedback from community members in the past for looking at some of the other activities that are necessary to maintain the operation and continuity of services and continuing to employ our existing staff. We're currently in this plan not including those elements per se. We are not going to, at this time, substitute our staffing with this funding. However, we have augmented staffing with this funding. But I wanted to note that it is an applicable option. And so as we proceed, we want to make sure that we're maximizing the use of these dollars. So community engagement is a huge component of any of these plans. And as you may recall, you'll see in a moment, in the last 6 months, we've had the in-person instructional grant. We've had the state expanded learning opportunities grant. We've had the SUHSD plan. We've had the local attendance and continuity plan. We've had the LCAP, and we've also had this Sr3 plan. With all of those, we've really reached out to our stakeholder groups to ensure that we have information from them, we're getting feedback, and we're constantly involving them in the process and development of these plans. So we've included our DLAC, our DPAC, all of our labor associations, our principals, our management associations, our student advisory committee through the superintendent, our Black Learners Advisory Committee, our Filipino Advisory Committee, and then over 7,000 respondents from students, parents, and staff through surveys. This timeline began in February and was taken to board in June, but before that we did a board workshop where you'll see some of the familiar documents where we reviewed how these plans were working synergistically. There was a board budget adoption in June, and then this plan, as presented, will hopefully be adopted tonight. So this may look familiar. We had this on an 8x11 sheet. There were 4 columns. As I mentioned, we had the state in-person grant, which really facilitated the movement from distance learning to in-person instruction. As a reminder, April 12th, we started with a percentage of our students back in person, and then May 3rd, all of our teachers and staff returned with an option for more of our students to return. Up to 17,000 students were able to return based on the state in-person grant. Then we have the State Expanded Learning Opportunities Grant, which really looked at extending the school year, offering those summer school options. We included ethnic studies as a big component of that grant. Over $5 million were allocated to ethnic studies to ensure that we were meeting the diverse needs of our student learners. We also had social emotional needs. So we looked at instruction. How do we increase the approach to learning loss so that our students would be able to accelerate. And then our Esser 2 monies, which also very similar approach those categories of mental health services, inter-instructional or academic supports, systems of supports in terms of mental health, COVID protocols, and then making sure that we had nutrition services and the ability to foster connection to home and school with our parents. This was the budget plan that was originally taken to board in June, and that was about $76 million. Very similar, maintained the same types of areas. We did add for Esser 3 a large area of cultural proficiency, and that really looked at providing cultural opportunities and growth for our students and for our community. That includes professional development, potentially anti-bias training, to ensure that our diverse learners not only felt that they were welcomed into our community, were part of our community, but were reflected in the work that we did on a daily basis. As I mentioned, social emotional supports, therapy, both providing counseling services, but also therapists, mental health therapists to support our students with the greatest needs, and then looking at instructional supports. That included funding for alternative ed programs, inclusive of the Launch Virtual Academy. And then, as I mentioned before, we had summer school and the extensive summer school. As you know, in the past, we had about 100 teachers providing summer school services. Last year, we approximated 258 teachers. And so we increased that offering across the school district at all school sites. We've learned some lessons, and we're making some modifications of that to centralize, but it still provide the number of opportunities for our students. And then some areas that I think are critical are the instructional materials. One of the things that we've heard repeatedly is really having instructional materials that are updated, that match the current state-adopted standards, and that they are aligned with diverse cultural representation that we have in our district. And so we will be attributing a large portion of these materials to support that. And then we've divided some components in student engagement, and that's between athletics, visual and performing arts, and CTE, and that's to address lost equipment, lost materials, and then also increased equipment because we can no longer share items within classrooms. Before, you used to have maybe one set of drawing pens or easels, and now each individual student has to have that to ensure that we mitigate some of those COVID prevention plans. And then project-based learning was something that we thought would be useful for re-engagement of students, making real-world relevant, engaging curriculum for our students, and so we'll be working with that. And then at that time, we had added tutoring. Now it's noted as tutoring and interventions for students. And then technology. As I mentioned, technology has been ever present in every single one of our plans. The only one that doesn't have a huge technology component is the LCAP, because that's more targeted towards direct services to students. but all of the other plans do. This one is also inclusive. We have about $7.1 million attributed to technology. And then we also included as I mentioned, we could use this for addressing facility needs and uses. In the original proposal, we had thought about adding 10 buses, but going back to the guidelines, we found out that that probably wasn't the most beneficial use, and so some of those monies have been attributed to learning loss, and so we'll talk about that. And then ensuring that also we have some classified professional development to ensure that they are getting all the supports to, once again, support our students. And then we added student, parent, family engagement and professional development. So that was what we had talked about at the budget overview. And now I'm going to share with you what we have now. So what you'll note is that there is a difference in between what the original board item was. We have now $78.4 million that has been attributed to this plan. So it's $78,405,961. We received an additional amount of $56,214, and that has been distributed into the interventions pot and also the professional development. And so the finalized plan will demonstrate that. Everything else was pretty much kept the same, except for, as I mentioned, we did eliminate the busing or the buses and put those to the instructional use. So the plan is divided into three major areas. If you had a chance to review that, one was the strategies for continuous and safe in-person instruction or learning, and we have $16,173,616 attributed to that. And then as a total percentage of the plan, at least 20% of the funding had to be attributed to addressing lost instructional time. And so that district minimum for us was $15,681,192. I'm not used to reading such large numbers. I know my bank account doesn't have that. So, and then in terms of use of any remaining funds, our total was $46,551,153. And I just wanted to note that the San Diego office, County Office of Ed this morning contacted us that we had that additional $56,214. And as I made note, we added that to interventions and tutoring and then to professional development. And there was one more area of clarification in the plan under the use of any remaining funds. There was a section 3.7. We had attributed under special services $15,000. Those $15,000 were attributed to teachers, pay teachers, where it's a lesson plan repository where teachers share ideas. In particular with some of those higher need courses, such as the moderate severe courses. And so we would be paying licenses for all of our teachers in special services to have those licenses. But that's the overall plan. It really is in alignment with all of our plans. Once again, focused on our LCAP goals, making sure that we're looking at the instruction, we're looking at our environment and our mental health supports, our community, and making sure that all of our plans are in coherence with what our goals are. At this time, just a quick overview of those plans. This is just kind of a synopsis of what those plans are and the items that are included in each of those actions. The HVAC systems, nutrition services, maintenance and operation, our COVID increased costs for overtime for transportation and maintenance and operation, as well as classified professional development. Two areas that were added is direct feedback from all of our stakeholders, and in particular was prevalent in the DLAC and DPAC comments, but also with our administrators and our general parent and student surveys, had to do with campus supervision assistants in needing more of those on site to support students, and then also acting assistant principals at the school sites that currently share assistant principals. And part of that had to do with we have become COVID managers. We are addressing a crisis on a daily basis, and our administrative teams are greatly taxed and pulled in 2,000 different directions. And so we wanted to make sure while we had this funding, we would increase the acting assistant principals to assist with that. And then, as I mentioned, for the lost instructional time, a big part of that expenditure is going to have to do with summer school, with our credit recovery at school sites, and so those funds go directly to school sites, with offering accelerated courses, not only in the summer, but during the academic year. Our intersession ability to offer courses during intersession, our school day extension offering 7th or 8th periods at different schools, and then our Saturday enrichment and credit recovery that's offered on those days. And then, as I mentioned, we have the VAPA, the CTE, and the tutoring interventions and the special services supports that I mentioned previously. For the use of remaining funds, I think this is critical to highlight. We are adding 3 psychologists. It is pertinent to note that although these funds expire in 2023, we also have 3 psychologists that are retiring, so the timing coincides. We are also offering, adding 14 behavior specialists to support our neediest students, in particularly at Alta Vista Academy and other schools that may need more hands-on support. I mentioned the mental health therapy, our cultural proficiency groups, so that included the Magaisa conference, our African American Students Conference, our Latino conferences, as well as training for students and staff. And then our library services, we augmented the allocations that we gave school sites by a 0.2 at each school site for librarians, as well as the technology that I mentioned. And then I have professional development increased because that shows the difference of those funds that, the additional funds that we received, as well as the athletics and student family re-engagement. So at this time, I'm available to take any questions. This has been a process that has been very collaborative, has included all of cabinet, has included all the stakeholders across the district, and we feel provides a comprehensive overview of the funding and how our actions and services are going to support our students.
Thank you, Dr. Alvarez. I think we have the public pulled it.
Yes, we have one speaker. Kathleen Cheers.
Yes. Thank you, Dr. Gary, for clarifying this is a plan, but not yet set in stone. I would like to begin by thanking Dr. Alvarez for the financial funding information she provided. When I began reviewing the data, I was also writing down questions. My questions far exceed the allotted 3 minutes. I will raise a few tonight, following up with an email to fortunate Dr. Alvarez with the others. Number 1, are all school sites going to have a dedicated librarian? It does not appear so. Number 2, monies allocated for counselors identifies a mere $16,200. Why? This seems to indicate, number 1, counselors have not been identified as critical to our student success, and 2, rumors regarding counselor layoffs are true. Number 3, why are we allocating any of these monies for teachers on special assignment? Number 4, paraprofessional staff, $2.682 million, define their titles and job responsibility. Number 5, $12 million, what is it for technology? What is this for? Number 6, instructional materials, $20 million, define materials. Number 7, replacement of ionizers. Didn't we just purchase them? More questions to follow in writing, but an answer to those listed would be appreciated. In closing, the very fact that our librarians came tonight and raised the issue of the literacy of our students should hopefully call to your attention the need for a librarian at every school. It is terrible when I personally have spoken to a neighbor whose son graduated last year and the young man can barely read a 4th grade textbook. This is not a negative reflection of the teachers, This is simply an indication that we need librarians. I thank you for your time.
No further speakers.
Thank you. Mr. Tarantino, you also pulled it, sir?
Thank you, President Segura. Yes, I'd also like to echo Mrs. Cheer's thanks to you, Dr. Alvarez, and your efforts to reach out to as many stakeholders as possible in order to put this together. I think it's a very comprehensive plan. I think it addresses a lot of the needs that we've been hearing, not only from the public, but from our staffs at the various schools. I do have some questions. So what happens if we can't get the personnel that's listed? For example, the extra 200 plus teachers to teach summer school. What happens if we can't get the 14 behavioral support specialists? What happens to that money? Does it go back into, do we have the discretion to put it in some other area, or does it just, we have to give it back if we can't meet the thresholds that we've put in?
Dr. Getty?
Thank you, President Segura and Trustee Tarantino. So I think the short answer is we're definitely going to make all efforts to make sure we can expend it in those areas. But in case not, I'll ask Dr. Alvarez to go through some of the contingencies that we have discussed. Dr. Alvarez?
Sure, that is a great question. So just to put it in perspective, last year the goal was 300 summer school teachers. We didn't reach 300, but we reached 256, which was 156 more than we had ever had. So definitely starting earlier. My team, along with Dr. Reyes's team, with finance and curriculum instruction, is laying out a plan for all the additional hiring and supports so that we can address that early and make sure that those metrics are made. However, I know that sometimes the funding may shift. And so Dr. Salkeld, I don't want to speak for you, but I know that you have had direct contact with our county office and the guidance that we've received regarding potential shifts if needed.
So yes, if there are any changes, the county office has indicated that we can make those changes. It doesn't have to come back to the board, that we have that ability to make that change. So there is that flexibility.
Okay, thank you. And another question. For nutrition services, it says that the money is going to be invested in equipment in order to enhance the availability of the food throughout the campuses. Is there any talk of how is just equipment going to remediate the problem that kids don't have enough time to get lunch and they don't want to wait in all the long lines? I would think that equipment along with personnel, I think personnel is the issue, not necessarily the equipment. Although I know that Director Span has, very creative ideas about different stations and carts and stuff like that, salad bars. But I think the problem is that we need people in order to man those, I don't know, I'm trying to be politically correct, to work those stations. How's that? To work those stations in terms of being accessible to more kids. Is it just going for equipment, or are there people involved as well? And I'm sorry I didn't ask these questions in advance, but we just got this on Friday, so.
Dr. Alvarez?
Sure. So I'm going to have Ms. Quirk respond to some of it, but I do know that part of that equipment is to increase the workstations and increase the efficacy of those workstations. However, that's the capital expense. There is the personnel expense that will be required to help support. Ms. Quirk, do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Can you hear me? Okay, I can never tell with this thing. So thank you for the question. And again, just following up on what Dr. Alvarez shared, it is to increase how we package food, how we prepare food, and so it's more readily available and so we can move lines faster. We have solved, I think, most of the problems with the speed of lines for this year. It took everybody a minute, but we got adjusted within that first, I would say, 3 to 4 weeks. And then we would also be looking at identifying locations where we can do other pop-up spots on campus. And then the staffing issue is something that we're continuing to work on, and continuing to just keep, filling positions that are open and available. And we will continue with that effort with the human resources as well.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. And my last question is, the librarian from Eastlake High School, Trevor Angould, I believe was? Angould, okay. Said that he is a full-time librarian. So this additional .2 that we're offering, then would that .2, because I'm assuming that the balance of his schedule as a teacher librarian is being picked up by the site. So would that additional .2, then the district would pay for that, or these funds would pay for that? Would that .2 then go back to the site to use at their discretion?
So currently, we fund a portion of all of our librarians from the LCAP.
Correct.
And so based on size, schools either have a .2, a .4, or a .6
Correct.
Allocation. This allocation itself offers an additional .2,
Correct.
which is already assumed in their budget. Because as a reminder, this was taken to board as a preliminary budget in June. And
So this is already accounted for?
This is already accounted for,
So
yes.
it's not an additional
No,
.2?
an additional
It was
prior
already,
to the June.
it's already,
Yeah.
it's already in their thing?
It's already in the budget.
Okay, all right, thank you for that clarification. That's all I have.
Thank you, Mr. Tarantino. Trustee Hall.
Thank you. I just wanted to, oh, we're spending them appropriately and within the time frame outlined or required. Thanks. That's all.
Thank you, Trustee Hall. Do we have any other comments or questions from the board? Vice President Solis?
Thank you, President Segura. Thank you, Ms. Hall, for that comment with regarding to bringing it back to us in 2 months. I was wondering if we can see somewhere in the same line of thought was if we can see what has been spent in each line item, and if it wasn't spent, where did it go to make the corrections or modifications or whatnot. I think that would be good. And also my other comment was with regards to this plan, is it also going to be on the website?
Dr. Alvarez?
So once the plan is approved, it will be on the website. It will also be available in Spanish.
Excellent. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Dr. Aguirre?
Thank you, President Segura. And just to address that, I think we can definitely develop a mechanism to provide a status update. I think that's an important aspect of again, demonstrating two things. One is the impact on our school sites and how we're providing that support. And secondly, the budget. How are we progressing? Are we, I recently there was a news article in a publication, or perhaps the LA Times, that was indicating the fact that school districts are actually having a hard time with timely expenditures, just because of kind of the multiple layers of complications like staffing or the other things that have been mentioned. So I think it's appropriate for us to develop a method, whether it's a memo, a memorandum, or a status update for the board to have that, or in a board meeting, to be able to, again, to just provide that information to the board, so there can be that understanding. So we can develop a mechanism for that with Dr. Alvarez, with Dr. Salkeld, and the team. We can do that.
Thank you, Dr. Aguirre. I'll just add just real quick. I don't want to, I would like to echo a lot of the points that Trustee Tarantino made and Trustee Hall. And I just, there's just so much work in this document. Truly appreciate all the work that went into this document. And it just, it's just a big reminder of how much work everybody's been doing, for almost 2 years now. And I just truly appreciate that. And there's just, and I like Mr. Tarantino said, I really appreciate the all the input that we received, and we seeked out, or you seeked out, and that's very important. But and that's really all I have on this. Do we have any other questions? If not, we need to have a motion to approve it.
And if I could just clarify, Mr. President, so with the changes that Dr. Alvarez mentioned in her report, the board item will be updated tomorrow with the revised plan indicating the new funds, and the fiscal impact will be changed to note that the final revenue is $78,405,961.
Okay.
Thank you. I'll entertain a motion for G1.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Vote, please.
Arancibia?
Yes.
Hall? Segura?
Yes.
Solis?
Yes.
Tarantino?
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0.
All right. I believe we're at G5. How's that? Mr. Tarantino.
Yes, thank you, President Segura. In the attachments, under narrative for dashboard, it says 13 Sweetwater schools did not complete facilities inspection tool, FIT report. So is the information, first of all, what schools, because about half of the schools completed the report. So was it divided along high schools versus middle schools, or was it across the board? And I know that it was because of the pandemic. I know that. And so I'm not questioning why they didn't do it. But is the information then, is it predicated just on those 13 schools who completed the FIT report, or was there an opportunity for other schools that did not do it at the first round? They went ahead and did it, and then this is a complete 23 schools. Do you understand my first question, Dr. Winters? You're looking
Possibly.
You're
Yes,
looking
sir.
perplexed.
Yes. But thank you.
See.
Thank you, Mr. Tarantino. I'd love to address that. So the totals you see there are the totals of the 27 schools, I believe it is. And some did get results, good, fair, exemplary. And some, as you can see, did not complete the report. And that was the total of the information for that school year. And yes, obviously, because we were not on campus really till May. And most of the time, those reports are done in the fall, as late as maybe January at the latest. So I think it was lost everyone's, most people just, it was not on their mind when they finally came back in May to get that done.
Okay.
I hope that answers all your questions related to that item.
It did.
Okay.
It did. It looks like on school climate, we got about a 62% response from students, which is I think pretty good considering the times in which they were questioned. So that's good. We still have a gap between, and I know it's a nature of the beast that middle schools are more, how do I say this, cohesive in terms of their collaboration as opposed to high schools, which are kind of departmentalized in working that way. But so we have a 71% positive rating for middle schools, and students for high schools 64%. And I'm glad to see that there was a 60-cent approved positive rating for alternative ed, because a lot of times those students, you know, they haven't given up, but everybody else has given up on them. And so for them to feel that that it's working, I think is a good thing for us to note. Let's see. Another interesting statistic that I took away was that only 50% of our students have someone at home to help them when studying or completing assignments, and I would think that that's across socioeconomic lines, because there was a lot of things that you know, I could not help my son with in terms of homework after after being away from,
like cartography, for example.
like cartotography, yes. In fact, he got an F in geography. No, he really didn't, because I couldn't help him. But anyway, I thought that was very interesting. And so our emphasis on tutoring and after-school supports and credit recovery and being with the trained teacher, I think, is the best way that we're going to mitigate learning loss and address that issue. So thank you for that statistic. Let's see. I know that throughout, if you look at these charts, and it's under, for example, under building relationships, and I don't have the page, I apologize for that, but it says, you know, there was an issue with sustainability. So do we have a plan in terms of how we ensure sustainability? I know that that the responses were all in the 4s, which was full implementation, but do we have a plan to get to sustainability? Because if it's not sustainable, then I don't know what good it is.
Yeah, thank you for that question. The responses you see there were really cabinet members discussing overall where we felt we were in these areas of building relationships. I think it's fair to say that one might say that you're never going to be fully at completion status or sustainability with relationships. It's constantly a give and take, and looking for improvements to make any chance you can. In particular, this year, obviously our focus has been SEL, coming back from the pandemic.
Right.
And I think there's a sense where everybody kind of took a step backwards during the time they were away from schools, that we're now rebuilding some things that might have been in place before the pandemic. So to say that we're at that sustainability now after all that we've been through would probably have been a reach. But our goal, again, is continuous improvement, to look at that data, including survey data throughout this school year, to see what progress we're making so we can move toward that ultimate goal of sustainability.
Okay. And then the last thing, there's a lot of emphasis, and even in Dr. Alvarez's item that preceded this, there's a lot of emphasis on professional development. Who is in charge of professional development? I have no clue.
Yes, so several people actually are in charge of professional development. Dr. Alvarez and her team, Maria Esther Lizarraga, plan a number of professional developments for certificated staff. I oversee professional growth Title II funds, which is geared toward mostly leadership, certificated management, as well as sometimes teachers and classified staff. So it's really a joint effort led by myself, Dr. Alvarez, Ms. Lizarraga as the 3-point people.
Okay, so it depends on the topic.
Yeah,
basically,
topic, and sometimes it depends on the person you're serving,
Okay.
whether it's a certificated,
Okay.
classified, or management.
Okay, all right, that helps. Thank you, that's all I have.
Sure thing.
Anybody else have any comments on that? I really appreciate that explanation on Mr. Tarantino's last questions about the, and our honest approach to, well, we're mostly fully implemented. you know, about the sustainability part, you know, and then it's not anybody's fault. It's just the times that we're in. I appreciate it being pointed out. And so that was something I was interested in, but I appreciate those answers from everybody. Do we have any more questions from the board on this? If not, do we?
Move to approve? Second.
There's a motion and second. Vote, please.
Arancibia?
Yes.
Hall? Segura?
Yes.
Solis?
Yes.
Tarantino?
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0.
And that should be it, correct?
Yes.
All right, we are adjourned. Thank you, everybody.